call this work session to order. For February 14th, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Here we are, would clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sheldon?
Here.
Brackman? Here. Karuba?
Here.
Reynolds?
Present.
Faulkner?
Here.
Eckler?
Here.
Aversa?
Here.
Russell? And Jones.
Here. At this time, we have opportunities for public to comment. If you'd like to comment, please. State your name and address.
I'm Doug Champ at 225 Bowen Street in Jamestown. And I hope I'm not the only guy with a Valentine's Day shoe on. I'm not anybody's Valentine, and that's kind of sad. It's the way my life works, okay?
Why does it not surprise you?
Look at you, you got gray on. You're like mourning or something.
It's a Hallmark holiday.
It's a Hallmark holiday? I bet your wife didn't say that. Anyway, I had our great city clerk, Jennifer Wayers, who does a remarkable job on everything she does, send you via an email or correspondence about the American Rescue Plan and Federal Register. Why is that important? Because each one of those pages have a value of $240,000 to the city. You divide 28 million into 117. $240,000. A lot of it's nomenclature at the federal level, but nevertheless, that's the value to this community of what you're going to be doing about it. The mayor said it was more liberal. It's not more liberal, it's more accountable. Read through it, you'll find out what I'm talking about. But here tonight, I'm going to address one major aspect that's come in front of our community most recently, gun violence. And I'm going to quote from the regs, and I highlighted to you all that you can follow along with me at some point and reread it. And this is what it says. Now, the Treasury took in all this information from all these people around the country, cities, everything, over the last year. And then they came up with the final Treasury response. This is the gospel according to American Rescue Plan. This is a Treasury response to gun violence. And this is something you've got to get clear on, what they call enumerated eligible uses. That's spread out through this whole plan, and then disproportionate uses that define application, and then the difference between recipient and beneficiaries and sub-beneficiaries. This is terminology that's important to understand. Enumerated eligible uses that respond to an increase in gun violence may be pursued in communities experiencing an increase in gun violence associated with the pandemic, specifically hiring law enforcement officials even above pre-pandemic levels or paying overtime where the funds are directly focused on advancing community policing strategies for gun violence. Additional enforcement efforts to reduce gun violence, prosecuting gun traffickers, dealers, and other parties continuing the supply of crime guns, as well as collaborative federal, state, and local efforts to identify and address gun trafficking channels, and investing in technology and equipment to allow law enforcement to more efficiently and effectively respond to the rising gun violence resulting from the pandemic. For example, technology to assist identification of guns whose serial numbers have been damaged. You have the money. You have the opportunity. The city of Jamestown is paying for a considerable amount of overtime and thousands of dollars to go after these most recent gun violence incidences. And they're going to be more. They're not going to go away. And I'd like to know what you're prepared to do about it. As in the movie The Untouchables years ago, Kevin Costner looks over Sean Connery after pursuing prohibition in Al Capone, and he's being shot mortally on the floor. He said, grabs Kevin Costner and said, "What are you prepared to do?" That's what I asked City Council. What are you prepared to do about gun violence in our city? And if you don't do it, all the playgrounds, all the investment in the community will hold second to potential gun violence issues. So you've got the money, you just have to allocate it and spend it and get it done. You can hire the officers, and the fear factor that you might have down the road that says, well, what are we going to do when the money runs out? Well, I would say probably the next 3 years, you're gonna have retirements. So the people that are well-trained are gonna take the place of those people that are gonna be retired. We can't think about 3 years from now, we gotta think about right now. We had 2 episodes this week, one now, and had one today and one on the weekend. We had a young child with a gun in her purse. We had a shooting before. What do we want? Want more of this stuff? So you got the money, there's no question about not having it. It's there to be used. And you can address the chief and his issues regarding what his needs are. And I'm telling you right now, there's no reason not to spend this. So I ask you all tonight, Kevin Conner, what are you prepared to do? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the council?
Good evening, I'm Sam Piazza, I'm the Kendall Club PBA president. I just want to talk a little bit about the American Rescue Plan funding. Doug kind of stated everything that's in this with the American Rescue Plan. This week alone, within this week, we've had 2 shootings. We've recovered 3 guns. It's not going away. Let's hire some more officers above what we have. Get them trained. There's retirements coming up. Everybody's concerned about the budget for the future. Get them hired now. There's money now for it. If it doesn't work out and it's not in the budget later on, through attrition, those officers can be, you don't replace the ones that retire. So through attrition, it'll work out. But now's the time to hire them. You get these officers trained. They'll be ready to go by the time these senior officers are ready to retire. It'll give them at least 3 years of experience, not training new guys when they first, the retirements first happen. Just want to quote the Go Erie, it's a newspaper in Erie, Pennsylvania. Erie Police adding new officers in 2022 as a way to help bolster their staff. They plan to hire 21 additional officers through the American Rescue Plan. Part of that is to combat the gun violence, drug violence, and everything else to make the citizens of Erie safer. I'm not looking to have 21 officers hired. Just give us a couple more. I'm not going to beat up the stats. The council has the stats. Our gun violence, our gun crime is through the roof the last couple of years. So I would just like you guys to take a look at the American Rescue Plan funding. It's in there. Public safety should be number 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Marie, you want to do the housing?
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. We had a very good presentation from the Assistant City Attorney, Ben Haskins, in talking about what's going on. Right now, they have seen, with the court opening again, they're handling about 10 to 15 cases per week. They are seeing some progress where they can issue $25 bench warrants to get these people in. Unfortunately, a lot of the properties that we're having issues with are limited liability corporations, and they can't be arrested. They have made progress on some old condemned properties and jumping debris. They are seeing some of the worst properties getting cleaned up because of court being open and pursuing these. There's a particularly bad one at 82nd Street that has been cleaned up considerably, and a junk pile there has been, I guess, the best it's been in many, many years. They're also trying to get properties where utilities have been turned off to find the responsible owner, whether it's a landlord or the tenant who hasn't paid utilities, to try to serve them with notices to get the utilities turned back on, especially with the cold weather. There is a demolition that will be proceeding at 366 Buffalo Street, near the school. That's being addressed. Under the 19A cases, 9 are moving forward. One has been transferred to a limited liability corporation, and there's been in touch with the new owner who actually is renovating the property. One is beyond being redeemed because the roof has been exposed, and it looks like there's gonna be a demolition. Zombie properties moving forward, in a number of cases because of the hot housing market, banks are being more receptive to putting funds into the properties, as I think they believe they can recover their investments in these homes that people have walked away from. Let's see, with the code enforcement officers, Ben has inspected these properties, and 20 of them have been inspected, on the 19As, and an additional 9 to 10 may be getting rolled out soon. So making significant progress. Unfortunately, we see that there are a lot of issues with properties not being up to code, but we are moving forward. I know this has been a significant issue for a number of people. We've received a lot of complaints from people about housing conditions in the city. So I commend both Crystal Surdick, the Director of Development, and Ben Haskins for all their efforts and what they're doing to try to get these properties, hopefully back to a state where people can live in them safely and not wind up in demolition. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, now on finance, Kim?
Sure, we had quite a lengthy agenda, so I'll try to get through this as fast as I could. And first resolution was Adam McKinley and Sergeant Adam McKinley and Detective Ron Powers to attend the New York State Homeland Security and Emergency Services Tactical Training Leadership Forum, March 2nd through March 4th, with expenses paid by the Jamestown Police Department pursuant to Section 77B of the General Municipal Law. That was approved. Second resolution was to lift the hiring freeze to hire 4 full-time firefighters to fulfill a current retirement that has been out since April of 2021, and 3 upcoming retirements that are in April and 1 in July. We had some questions for Chief Green, very detailed discussion. I don't know if you want to highlight any of those for the rest of the council, but basically, we approved it, so. Does anybody that was not in public safety or finance have any specific questions for him? Next resolution is lifting the hiring freeze in the Parks Department. Again, that was due to a vacancy of a retirement. That was approved. Resolution number 4 is actually a typo on your agenda. It's actually $36,075 using ARPA funding and lost revenue to make some upgrades to the informational technology infrastructure and networking equipment. This will include switches, fibers, the new site at Washington Street, as well as the Parks Department. That was approved. We have a resolution number 5 designating $285,000 for the ARPA lost revenue for a real property revaluation in the city. And resolution number 6, which is awarding the contract to GAR Associates for $285,000. We did discuss with the assessor that if we prolonged this for a year, as was mentioned or questioned, it would add roughly an additional $400,000 to that expense. Any questions for the assessor or anyone?
Why would it have 400?
Because you would have to, I'll let you explain it.
Because New York State is only allows you to use data for 6 years, and since it's been 15, they were willing to let it go this year, but next year they're gonna want an entire project. And the entire project previously cost $1 million, but they're able to get it down based on newer technology that they now have.
So it's 185.
Yeah.
So the 400 is in addition to the.
Correct. be for the collection of the data, and then the 285 would be what this resolution is.
Excuse me, can you explain you talked about the rationale to the taxing of properties for the, like, the residential homes versus the industrial?
Oh, yeah. I went through all of our industrial properties, and 40% of them have already been reduced very low using the circularity and grievance procedure. Several of them are on the market, and they have been on the market for a while, but they're listed for way more than the assessed value. And we have a couple sales that were for more than the assessed value.
Any other questions?
So was it approved by finance?
Yes, at this point. I mean, I think a lot of people have some questions, and, you know, we have next week to iron out those questions. Resolution number 8, the city comptroller being hereby authorized to make the following amendment to the 2022 general fund budget to replace the park board. Increase appropriation 5,300 and decrease the contingency account 5,300. Again, this is an emergency repair. The boiler is defunct and needs to be replaced.
Seven.
7, I'm sorry. 7 comes back. The purchase of Deborah Monroe to purchase the parcel located on Lakeview. Assessed value of 4,600 and the lot size, that was approved. The only thing, Jen, that we wanted to make clarify is that statement in that was cleared up before the final resolution, not possibly, but, okay. Resolution number 9, Mayor and Jeff Lehman, and Director of Public Works and Acting Director of Parks and Recreation, authorized and directed to purchase from Sign-On Equipment 2021 track-driven sidewalk plow with a V-plow attachment for a total amount of $153,259. Jeff, is this what we approved last month, just the expense, because now it's going through? Okay, that's what I thought. So this is ARPA funds that is paying for it. We approved that last, amount. This is the actual purchase.
So this is the new bond here.
Yes, correct.
There's a typo in there that matters, it's Syncon,
Oh, yeah.
CYNCON.
Good catch.
Resolution number 10 is designating $30,000 in ARPA funding for the purpose of purchasing and installing Marco Clay ball field mix to 6 of the city's baseball fields. Again, that was approved. This is gonna be a summer-long project at those 6 fields. And Deanna, I don't know if you wanna add anything else, just that the current material you used is no longer available, and this will improve the conditions of the fields.
Yeah, the material we use at 2 of the fields at Bergman, the 2 at Roseland, Stadium West and Nordstrom is obsolete. We ran out of that material about 12 years ago, so we just kind of been fudging our way through for now. And this is the next best option. It's what we use on all the other fields, so we'll bring it all to the same material. Easier to use, easier to get the fields ready, save on maintenance time as well.
Dan, is this the only vendor that bid or went to, or?
This is who we usually buy most of our ball field mix from. Marco Clay comes from one place out of Canada. They're the closest vendor in New York State. The other ones are in Ohio and Pennsylvania.
Resolution number 11 is that the mayor be authorized to enter into a grant agreement with Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy for the amount of $277,500 and no cents, subject to the approval of the corporation council as to form. This is for the repairs for dead trees and blockages along the Chautauqua River that was addressed and approved prior. So this is just the actual grant agreement for that happening.
Does that, pardon me, Kim, does that include subcontractors too? Because
Yes.
I don't believe the watershed has the people
Yes.
or the equipment to do
Yes.
this work.
That backup should have all been in your file.
Yeah, I read
Yep.
through that, I just wanna make sure that.
Yep. Resolution number 12 is designating $14,000 and no cents in ARPA lost revenue funds for the purpose of funding hand dryers in the city of Jamestown Parks Day. That was approved. Resolution number 13 was designating $180,000 and no cents in ARPA lost revenue funds for the purchasing new playground equipment at Nordstrom Park and building a new 5-foot wide handicap accessible path to the new playground. Dan, do you have anything you want to add on that?
The playground at Nordstrom Park was taken out 3 years ago. All that's left there now is a swing set. That park is home to our cigarette baseball league. It's full all summer long. That's the longest running time-wise league, consistently throughout the summer. And like I say, right now, we just have one swing set. When we build new playgrounds, we have to make them handicap accessible. So we'll look at adding a path and possibly some parking spots as well.
And the last resolution out of finance, is the designating $30,000 and no cents in ARPA lost revenue for the purpose of purchasing and installing new signage at all the Jamestown city parks. Dan, if you want to add your other statement.
About 5-6 years ago, again, we started adding new signage in the parks. Allen Park, the boat landing, to name a few, Veterans Park. So we'd like to continue with that through the rest of our bigger parks. And then our bigger informational signs that we have in the parks, we need to change some language on them, get them all along the same lines as far as when the parks will close. And then we'd like to add some with Spanish on them as well throughout the park system.
There's 3 other items that we talked about in finance. One will be coming under, that was not on the agenda, but we discussed under new business, is Controller Ryan Thompson brought to us an ARPA review and consulting service with a company called the Neski and Company out of Cicero, New York, recommended by our auditors, to do some oversight and consulting, making sure our ARPA funds are spent well and properly, as well as providing just general consulting. The maximum amount that we're going to put in is $7,000 for this service. So, given all the questions and ever-changing rules with ARPA funding, we thought it was in the city's best interest to move forward with that, so that came out of finance as a new business item. Number 15, I'll let Crystal talk about, but I'm gonna have Ryan do the sales tax update first, so we got some really good news to share. And that was it out of finance.
So just a brief update on the sales tax for 2021. We did receive our 4th quarter payment a few weeks ago. The total amount was $1,893,000. It's $113,000 above the 4th quarter of 2020, 6% increase there, and also $230,000 above 2019, a 14% increase. So our 2021 budget was right around $6.7 million. 2021 actuals came in at about $7.958 million. So that's an increase of $1.2 million over what we budgeted. So that's an 18.5% increase. That is also an increase of $1.1 million, or 17%, over what we received in the same time period last year, so for the full year 2020. So some really nice news for the city. Obviously, inflation is driving all of that. Some questions?
No, thank you.
All right.
Crystal?
Very good, Deanna. So we have a couple of guests that have come. We've got Patty Sentai, Joe Tom, and Eric Hyland. They're just going to share a little bit, just like last week with Dave from Fullcraft, a little bit about what they've experienced with the pandemic and challenges that you faced and anything that you want to tell us. So, whoever would like to go first.
I'll start her off. Trevor has a lot of faces customers in here. So Tim and Tony especially really helped us touch bases and community through a lot back in 2020. I probably recognize a letter that we had sent on behalf of all the restaurants back in May of 2020, asking the city to act quickly. We knew that things were changing quickly. We didn't know to what extent. We had the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and most of us could kind of see past that. And so we needed to change quickly, and we needed to offer outdoor dining space that was gonna offer a safer environment for folks to eat, a safer perception for folks to want to come out and spend money, an ability to maintain staffing levels so folks didn't have to get laid off. We also needed to do things like extend the New York State liquor law to pertain to the entire property because of the outdoor dining. And so we needed the city's help to work with the New York State Liquor Authority to really drive that home quickly and make it really efficient. We need to amend different codes like the noise ordinances and the sidewalk ordinances to create parklets like Eric has, and back patios like I built. And you all acted so quickly and so efficiently to get that done. It was really quite nice. You know, you always hear these things about how bureaucracy and red tape slows things down, and in my opinion, I guess I would agree with that most of the time. In this particular case, with the pandemic, that's not the case. It was very effective, and it really helped us out. And so I can only speak to my experience. I'm not a fine dining operation, and Patty probably experience, you know, talk more about that. But yes, we were pizza. Yes, we were takeout friendly. But our sales were about 40% takeout, 60% eat-in. And so we went into it saying, okay, we have to change quite quickly. So we put a takeout window in the front of the restaurant, an outdoor heater outside, and some tables and chairs, and tried to do things really quickly with the least amount of money, because we didn't have a lot of capital we could infuse into this, especially going into, you know, the unknown. We didn't know how much money we need for reserves. We could still employ all of our people. So we had to take that 60% eat-in and maintain that, or at least, because we probably weren't going to get that 60% to slide over to takeout. We weren't going to get that full 100% same business volume for takeout. So we knew we had to have the outdoor dining, especially when we went to 0%. You know, we went from 50% occupancy to 0, and then up to 50%. So doing that 0% period was really tough. So we did what we had to do. Those ordinances really helped. Kathy Hochul was lieutenant governor then, now governor, came down and did a little tour of Jamestown and approved our eating areas and our keep 6 feet apart and all that fun things. And so businesses were asked to do the impossible. We were asked to do more with less, to look after our team, to look after our customers, to follow the daily press briefings from, you know, Governor Cuomo at the time and the Department of Health, New York State, and also Chautauqua, to make people feel safe, to ensure that they were safe, and to not know what the next day was going to bring. I would wake up in the morning and I would say, what do I think is going to happen today? And then I would watch the press briefing, and we would adjust immediately. We had an employee zone on Facebook, and we would our team would talk, and we would have to read through the cryptic language that was being used and anticipate what the next couple of weeks are going to be, and try to beat them there, beat the regulations there. Well, during that, we had to, you know, have the expense of masks when masks weren't available. So I had to hire a nice older lady who was a great customer of ours, and she was a seamstress, and she made my whole team masks. I could not find any. We had to, Mark Saxon from Jamestown Awning did a terrific job and did us a favor, and for a couple of pizzas made us a nice little partition by the register. We had to, you know, have signage, and of course the expense of the tables and umbrellas for outside, which we did. So with all that being said, we also had to wade through policing. You know, making sure that folks were wearing masks, and if they weren't wearing masks, you know, how do you handle it? There wasn't too much guidance on that. You know, making sure that if someone was within 5 feet, 11 inches or less from each other, we went out there and said, oh, make sure you give each other more space. We had to wipe down surfaces that you never think that you'd have to wipe down that frequently, but we did it. And most of it, you know, came with, hey, you know, we don't have the staff for that, so what do? Well, Lydia and I, as being owners of the restaurant, we didn't have a kiddo at the time, we just worked all the time, you know, and I gotta give my wife credit, she's not here right now, but she was right next to me. You know, sometimes it'd be just the two of us. You know, we would work together with the takeout window, and when orders weren't coming in, we'd sit down and play rummy cube and try to make the best of it, you know, and we think about those days, you know. You have these stories of couples, you know, when we first got together to live in an apartment and slept on the floor and ate peaches out of a kid. That was our story. You know, between pizza orders, we played board games in the restaurant because we couldn't use the restaurant everything was outside. So those were interesting times, but we never had to lay off a single person, ever. We were fortunate enough that with the outdoor dining and we had a whole online interface come in and merchandising, and because of a great community who supported us, and we had the opportunity to work with the community in offering that match pizza program. I don't know if you remember that. You probably remember that. We donated over 250 pizzas. and the community bought the other 250 pizzas, and it went to all of our first responders, EMS, mental health, police, and fire, because they were really the boots on the ground. And that was our experience. So through all of that, and trying to work through all of that, and the numbers, and what will we even be able to operate tomorrow? We didn't have the luxury of working from home. We had to be there. We didn't have the luxury of the paycheck that may or may not come the next day. It was all an unknown. So basically, we felt that it was our responsibility as a restaurant and as Americans to do what we had to do to provide a service and a product so that folks who were, we have a large elderly customer base as well. We want to make sure that they could still have their Friday pizza and their Saturday pizza and offer some peace of mind, whether it was curbside delivery, regular delivery, whatever we had to do. So just one more point on that, we also had to combat messaging. I received multiple messages on Facebook and email of both sides. Hey, thanks for doing what you're doing, thanks for staying open, and you're killing the entire country, and why are you still open? And my 82-year-old grandma got a pizza there, and I saw somebody's nose was out of their mask, and even though it was through a window, now she's gonna go to the hospital and die. And I read a lot of hate mail actually came through too. And we didn't really share that, because I don't like to share negatives, but it was hard, So why do I say all this? In this package of information are some of these programs. I know that there's a lot of money being dished out to Jamestown, and it can come and it can be spent quickly, and it's kind of intimidating, this amount of money. But as small business owners, we feel, and I'll let Patty and Eric talk about the restaurants and their experience, but we feel like this is a once in a lifetime financial infusion from the federal government to our small town. And we had a presentation on sales tax, we had some comments from the assessor. If small businesses receive some of these funds and we develop our infrastructure for our businesses, we're going to maintain and increase jobs, which we are doing. We're going to maintain and increase the value of our properties, which will increase property taxes, and will increase the overall facade of the city. So we don't have to deal with some of the issues we're dealing with these dilapidated buildings. We're going to increase the jobs. And, quite frankly, we're going to increase the attractiveness of the downtown area so that folks from out of the area, when they come to the comedy center and hotels, will say, I want to go there, I want to go here. They look like they're in the 21st century. So, me personally, I'm asking that we act quickly, again, for the second time, and we pass some of these Department of Development initiatives so we can use some of these funds to help address some of these issues that we weren't able to address over the past 2 years, because those funds had to go other places. We've seen it work. I can tell you it works. Outdoor dining works, patios work, parklets work, and people are spending again, as you see by the sales tax that is coming in. So thank you for the time, and please, I ask you as a council to look out for small businesses and restaurants like us and help pass this. We can use these funds, and I can tell there'll be good ROI, there'll be dividends on this. Thank you.
Eric Hagelin with 4 Below Haggis Bar and Grill down on 2nd Street in Jamestown. So again, as a united front, we are all on one team here. We're all restaurants within the Jamestown organization. We don't feel each other are competitors. We're teammates, and we're there to do the right thing and do as much as possible together to make sure that every business in downtown Jamestown is successful. I talk to Joe quite often, Patty as well, to be able to say what's working with you. We've done a lot of things over the last year and a half to pivot. I started DoorDash. I've never done DoorDash before in my life, but started DoorDash and trying to figure that out, and the thing blinking out every other second and that kind of stuff. But since I started my restaurant in 2019, and then 5 months later had to shut down for 3 months straight. Threw out over $15,000 worth of draft beer, food, donated a bunch to St. Susan's Soup Kitchen that they could take. There were full cases of product to be able to use, to be able to at least somewhat give back to the community. My one and only goal when I was to reopen was my staff and my people. Most people, 90% of everyone that works for me had second jobs. They did not work for me to have just spending money or fun money. They use that to pay their heat. They use that to pay their electric bills. They use that to get to put gas in their cars and things like that. So I was bound and determined to open back up on day one and put everybody back to work, and I did not lose one employee. I actually hired one extra employee over the last year. The issue that obviously there's only so much money in everybody's pocket. I had to rob Peter to pay Paul. Things that I would normally have done to fix things or maintain things, I'm putting Band-Aids on things that need stitching, not just a Band-Aid. And that's where, the first 3 months, I lost roughly about $38,000 just being open, staffing everybody and putting everybody in their place. Where did that money come from? It came from my personal account. It came from the business account that was drained down to basically nothing. So I was not able to do basic maintenance things to my business because I did not have the funds available, because everything that I had was going to pay my employees. I ask you guys and encourage you guys to make the commitment to us to help us be able to do this, move fast on it. Anybody that's doing any type of projects, as many of you guys know, you don't just make a phone call and all of a sudden a week later they're starting on your project. You got to get into the queue, you got to get into the product, you have to be able to purchase the materials to do all this stuff. That takes a lot of time. The longer we sit on this, the longer that we don't have this available to us to start projects, the longer it's going to be, and the more damaging it's going to be to all the businesses in downtown Jamestown. I appreciate these two people next to me. They're great business partners, and I consider that to be what we all are within Jamestown. We've already lost JLEs, we've already lost other businesses. We can't afford to lose anybody else. So with that, I ask you guys to move fast on this, approve the funds, so we can move forward and get everybody situated and started sooner than later. Thank you.
Sentai Landmark Restaurant, these guys are a tough act to follow. I guess what I really want to stress is that with all of us, our key is to keep operating in buildings that are struggling and draining us with money that we don't have because of what happened with COVID. So we're asking you to please look at this grant and help us escalate forward. I'm putting in a new patio because COVID made us reinvent ourselves, and we're doing it with money that we don't have. We're doing it so that we can succeed and go forward. And I have 34 employees that are still working and working full-time, that during COVID I took up to the watermark to keep them going. And that was a struggle in itself. So I think that if we got things to help us, we could move forward for 5 years, 10 years, not just a little Band-Aid, as it could be, without the money. Because we just keep struggling to borrow from Peter to pay Paul to make sure the roof's not leaking. I mean, major things, like the heating and HVAC and handicapped bathrooms for Peggy at Forte. Things that need to be done to these buildings to keep us as tourist attractions going forward, so people come to Jamestown and they're proud to come to Jamestown, not just, Jamestown. So I thank you. I thank you for taking your time with us. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming, sharing your stories, and just your persistence and willingness to keep going. And we know that you've been through a lot. So appreciate you all. So with that, we have a huge list. We started small with the last meeting, and we've added quite a few more. So I guess I'll kind of leave it to you, maybe President Doles. I can go through all of these, or we can take a portion of them and you can ask questions, or if you'd like me to go through them all and then throughout the week you guys can, or throughout the next 2 weeks you can ask me questions. Whatever is really your preference. What's in here is a snapshot. Certainly not, as I mentioned, all the details have not fully been fleshed out because we need to know kind of where the direction that we're gonna go. But what would you like to do? Would you like me to try to hit all of them and then?
We did, you just have the ones from this week.
So group 2 would be.
Yep, so group 2, yep.
You just want to briefly.
So it starts with actually restaurant, retail, and services. So let me get to that slide. So this particular program is specifically a smaller amount of funding we're envisioning for each grant. The total program allocation is $200,000. This funding would be to help restaurants, retail, and other service-related businesses kind of re-envision the way they're doing things, whether it's start DoorDash or do a marketing, a small marketing campaign or whatever that might be. It's not meant for infrastructure, it's not meant to build. This is really that we don't need $50,000, we need $5. So that's kind of what we envision with this program. The next program is for workforce development. That's a subject that we've heard a lot about. We have suggested a $750,000 allocation. We know that, as Eric mentioned, and we are struggling with this ourselves in DOD with home projects. Access to contractors, access to different types of workforce that, projects are taking an extremely long period of time. It impacts supply chain, impacts everything, right? So knowing that we have a lot of businesses in the community that, and we've heard this over and over and over again, people need help. There are lots and lots of jobs available, and there are not lots and lots of skilled or even somewhat trained or workforce ready people to fill those jobs. So we think that this is a focus that we really need to allocate some funding to. With that, specifically for contractors, because there is such a shortage in contractors, we've had some conversation with Southern Tier Builders Association, a number of the contractors that we work with. Just in general, contractors are really hard to come by, and a lot of our projects are even being pushed out at least a year, if not longer, to even get started. We're having a hard time even getting quotes, so we're hearing and seeing that the contractor shortage is something that is not going away, and it's an area that we need to try to help support. Storefront improvements program is kind of goes along with providing some support to those businesses that have storefronts, whether it's a restaurant or it's a retail location or whatever it might be. Taking a look at your storefronts and from the street all the way to if you're purchasing something, what that experience is. So as a pedestrian, somebody who's walking down the street, being able to really interact with the storefronts that you have on your main streets, drawing people in, making people want to come into your establishment. It starts with the facade, your signage, your logo, your whatever it is that your business has to offer, and then bringing people into patron your establishment, and then the experience is all the way through the store. How are things being merchandised? Is it easy to shop in? Is it easy to is it a good positive environment? Is it an enjoyable experience? So it's not something that I think business owners tend to be really great at the one thing that they started the business to do, and not always great at everything. So providing that support, we see it as being a consultant of some kind that would come in and help them kind of take a look at their space, how they would recommend rearranging it, and then providing some assistance to do that. Establishing a business incubator program. This is something that we have talked about a lot. Some of our other agencies and community organizations have talked about it a lot. It's something that is kind of a growing trend in other communities. We have talked with the Small Business Development Center about Business Incubator. For those, I'll just quickly read the description here for those who don't know what a business incubator is. Business incubators provide infrastructure for new businesses just starting out. Perhaps a food manufacturing venture needs an improved commercial kitchen location, or a fledgling manufacturer needs shop space. Incubators often provide such turnkey facilities that represent a savings in overhead for startups. This project may include physical space, shared administrative staff, access to capital, coaching, mentoring, networking, connections, prototype development, and access to other technical services. So really it's establishing an ecosystem for entrepreneurs and startup businesses to just really get their feet under them and be able to start up.
Crystal, are you working with the college, Fredonia, or with Chicago Opportunities? Because both of them have incubator
We would
programs.
absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
because it doesn't make sense, they've already had established
Yep.
incubators, and it would be probably good to partner, or at least get
We
some
would absolutely do that.
action. Okay.
Yeah, I don't wanna volunteer that we're going to partner with
Right,
any
right,
one agency
right. No,
because
but-
we haven't
Right,
figured
I
out who that
understand.
is yet,
But
and
I just wanna make sure that
they
you're
may
looking.
say, what?
What, but I'm just saying, there are resources in the community.
Yes,
that are
absolutely.
available that would make
Absolutely.
sense to-
And you bring up a really good point, and I've said it before, but I'll reiterate it quickly. Any and all of these programs, before they get ready to be rolled out, we would look at, okay, what are all of the resources that we have? Who do we need to collaborate with? We do not want to duplicate anything. We want to make sure that the funds that go into any of the programs that we do move forward on are being spread as far and wide and have the biggest impact possible, so.
No, I appreciate that,
Yep.
because that's what I was hoping you would be looking to collaborate.
Yes. Okay, so the next one is the Urban Development Action Grant, reimbursement replenishing. So, the, Urban Development Action Grant is funding that the JLDC, it actually was the purpose of the JLDC was to administer those funds. That is what we use for, grants for businesses, or, I'm sorry, loans, not grants. That is basically our lending arm here. And we did a couple of what's called first instance loans for a couple of projects. And so the intention was always at some point to be able to replenish those funds so that we're able to continue to loan JLDC funds into the community. So we are recommending that we, assuming that this is allowable under ARPA, that we be able to do that. Strategic property acquisition. We are recommending $500,000. This would be to purchase property that may be considered vital to spurring economic development. We've not identified anything. It's not, something that we're ready to jump into right away. But if we had some funding set aside to be able to do that, it would give us the opportunity to be really strategic and look at what might be available or what we might see as being able to present an opportunity for future economic development. So, and we've seen a lot of other communities use ARPA funding for that purpose, and we thought that it would be something that would, could potentially be really beneficial. New business development. So we're recommending $250,000 for new business development. This would be funding to assist new businesses by providing grants for all of those costs associated with launching a new business. Again, supporting that entrepreneurial community, and adding additional support in terms of capital. Chattaquin River Basin activation. So we, as part of our match, we received a local waterfront revitalization program grant from the state. It's in the amount of 1.2 million. Our match is just over 225,000. We are asking to increase that to 500,000 total towards programs and projects that would add and be able to complete that Chattaquin River Basin, which is the basin area behind the Comedy Center Park, and to continue that waterfront redevelopment. Programming Fund and Events Coordinator. So we are recommending $1 million towards that. That would include the coordinator salary over the period of time. And then it would also include carrying on that events programming fund. The citywide marketing and branding initiative, which has kind of been just sort of sitting and waiting for a plan to move that forward. We are recommending $300,000. That is roughly the amount to roll out the first year's worth of a branding campaign that would be kind of pushed out throughout the region, into Ohio, Cleveland area, some of the larger markets, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Toronto, and get our city brand out there. And that would replace the Up Close brand that is currently, I guess, kind of probably the most familiar to everybody. And then program administration. So all of these programs take a whole lot of work and a whole lot of time and a whole lot of capacity that we already are running really thin on. So we kind of looked into what the allowable was for American Rescue Plan as far as administration goes. Typically it's around like a 10%. I don't know that we really verified that there is a limit, but we set the limit of 5%. We think that that's doable with the staff that we have. It certainly will have us running and chasing our tails, but it would allow us a little bit of capacity. And you know, we've got to be able to keep the staff so that we can actually administer the programs. That's it.
Just a couple of quick.
Yep.
The applications flexible, or can be flexible. The amounts, how do you feel about specific amounts of?
We really just tried to think about what are some of the programs that would require larger dollar amounts. So like building infrastructure, equipment, those sorts of things are gonna come with a higher price tag. And then kind of worked it out from there. So that's where, you know, in my note in the packet you're looking at, asking to be somewhat flexible. We talked a little bit about it last week. You know, just being able to continue to evaluate how the programs are going and where the funds are, you know, being applied for. Like who's, you know, are we spending a lot more in one category over another? Do we need to move funds from one program to another because this program we thought was gonna be in high demand is not, but this other one that we didn't think was gonna be in high demand is, right? So just asking that we be able to not lock ourselves in, and that, you know, if we go with certain dollar amounts, and they can change according to what you guys think too, but, you know, being able to pivot on and make sure that we're moving the money to where it's really needed.
The other question I have is this,
That would, yep, I just made sure that I added it up to 10 million.
the other question or comment I have, this summer in the series of forums that we've had, we have discussed any neighborhood initiatives or for residents, any housing or neighborhood revitalization.
Yeah, that's the whole other, that's the $5 million category that we haven't even started
I
yet.
just wanna make sure.
Yep.
Because I know that was
Yep.
a big piece to what the public had told us in
Mhm.
the 4 different sessions that we had.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
We had
Well,
discussed.
once we get through this, I thought we would start on the
I
next
just wanted
one.
to address
Yeah.
that because I know that's come up,
Yep.
and I think that, that's an important flag to get. I mean, the business end of it's great. It's
Yeah.
definitely necessary to drive business and jobs and the economy and
Mhm.
everything, but also, getting into the neighborhoods and,
Absolutely.
having the opportunity to help individual people.
Yes. We felt focusing on these programs first, for us, I think because we administer JLDC, we've written other programs, we can roll these out, I think, quicker with the Healthy Neighborhoods Housing, the 5 million that's allocated to that and mental health. We have a lot of other moving parts right now. We've got our annual action plan coming up. We've got some other HUD funding. We've got, some other community partners and agencies that we're working with that have other initiatives. So we want to make sure that we're really looking at what all of the resources are for those, and that we're, again, layering and leveraging each other's resources and spreading the funds as far as we possibly can. And that is, dare I say, a bit more complex, just because there are so many other programs. This, as complicated as this is, the housing and neighborhood stuff is actually more complicated, so.
So I just wanted to address
Mhm.
that.
Absolutely. Okay, that's all I have. Again, you know how to find me.
I wanna add one thing, Brian will be sending you all council a update of the expenses that we have added into this ARPA. Again, we are spending money, unlike some comments that have been made, prior. At this point in time, with some stuff that's on the agenda for this month, we will be upwards of 7.3 million, excluding Crystal's presentation, so, keep that in mind when you start reviewing some of this stuff, and, remember, although we made some money on sales tax, our budget this year is also $1 million already in the hole too, so keep all those things in perspective, and obviously Ryan, the controller, is here to answer any questions I can help you with on the finance side, I'm here as well.
The 7.3 million is what's left in lost revenue, actually, the
Yeah, sorry.
total amount spent is 3.1.
Yes, 3.1. So, 3.1 in 2 months is a pretty significant number that we spent. So, I just want you all to have a grip on what we're doing with it, what we're spending. Remember what was presented, as to the needs of the departments and all of that as well when you're reviewing that.
Thank you.
President, would you take a question from the audience? Or is that inappropriate?
Very briefly.
Anything $1 million or more needs, that's designated as such, needs written agreement from the Department of Treasury to pursue that. Otherwise, it has to be segmented. Do you understand what I just said? So that 1 million designation, even though your filing requirements do not recall it, it is required. You have to segment it down to other actions rather than $1 million allocation.
There's no resolutions, we have, two members of the public safety committee, Champ, presented his, needing to look at, spending more money to combat gun violence in the city. We can use funds to hire more police or pay for overtime even more. Those are some comments. I also had a presentation from, Doug Scotchmark, about the noise issues in the city of Jamestown. He presented us with some information, about what some other areas are doing, including Elkhart, Indiana, San Juan, Puerto Rico. And, Elkhart, Indiana, they hired a specific, police officer to combat noise, drive around in an unmarked vehicle, and, it's like loud cars, stereos, fireworks, whatever occurred. And the interesting things was that, he also made a lot of drug arrests associated with the noise. So that was kind of interesting. And they had a very hefty fine program too there, which, pretty much, more than paid for the officer and paid for a vehicle for him to use. This is something that we might want to consider, increasing our fines. I know we talked about increasing fines for the fireworks, illegal fireworks have been going off. I'm still waiting on a report from the Corporation Council on that. I know we have some other things that are more pressing, but we need to get that back on the table here before, fireworks start up again, usually right around Memorial Day. And also address looking into using low noise fireworks, fireworks that, have nice, colors and flashes of light, but don't have the huge bang, which just rattle people's windows and give, people with PTSD problems, animals as well. So this is something we're gonna look into more, especially we're gonna have more events with fireworks this year. And we did have, a brief presentation from the police chief on the annual report. And I'd like him to just go over the highlights of the full council if you would.
Sure, thank you. I'm proud to say this year the police department managed to lower the crime rate while also increasing our community engagement, which is, in the grand scheme of things, the best we can do. We're increasing our community presence, but we're also holding people accountable. Our violent crime decreased from 8.6, this is per 1,000 people, to 8.4. Our property crime dropped from 38.5 to 36.9. And we performed 370 community service details and 1,145 beat patrols, which is a lot. That's a lot of walking the beat. Our confirmed shootings did go up from 19, or they went up to 19 from 12 in 2020, so an increase of 7. This year we seized 55 guns compared to 17 in 2020, so a huge increase there. Our cocaine seizures by grams, we were at 1,565.9 compared to 594.4 in 2020, so another huge increase there. Heroin increased 324 grams compared to 83.3. Fentanyl 835 compared to 292. And meth, another huge increase, 4,003 compared to 1,789 in 2020. But again, this was all accomplished by our officers working through a pandemic. So I applaud them, they did excellent work. So I'm very happy with the direction our department is going.
Deputy Chief Coons was in the, finance meeting.
Guys, as your Deputy Fire Chief, I'm happy to present to you just a quick little synopsis of our 2021 numbers and kind of the report on what your fire department did over the last year. Our total calls for service totaled 7,775. That's a 10.3% increase over 2020. EMS continues to be our largest burden. 6,239 calls for EMS were entertained. In addition to that, we transported 1,130 people to the hospital with the ambulance. Our fires are pretty consistent with year over year. The fire load has not increased substantially over the last year. We had 106 fires. 74 of them required fire investigation, and 38 of them were structure fires involving commercial or residential buildings. As far as mutual aid, using our neighboring departments to aid us, 415 times we requested them to come into the city of Jamestown. Some other notables as far as the Fire Prevention Bureau. One thing that we've really tried to work hard on the last couple of years is more community outreach, more transparency with our citizens and our residents. Try to educate them more on fire prevention, encourage them to have smoke detectors that are working. I'm proud to present to you that we did 120 site inspections just on that alone last year. The year prior to that was in the single numbers. So we definitely are trying to push forward on that, be more accessible to the community, and to work with folks more for them to be able to recognize hazards within their own home. I do that as 120 fires that did not occur. In addition, as far as our training division goes, our members completed 5,400 hours of fire training alone. That's 685 different training sessions that they conducted, both with self-study and with OFPC coursework. We also did a commensurate amount of that for EMS training, so our total training hours totaled 10,800 roughly last year. We also outfitted 2 brand new pumpers, thanks to you guys on the council. You were gracious enough to fund us with 2 new pumpers that replaced 2 outmoded and very obsolete pieces of equipment that we did have on the road front line. As we lean forward into 2022, just a few notable goals. We're still working to develop up our new software reporting system. That's going to give us some more guidance tools, keep us a little bit more compliant with our statistical reporting to OFPC. We're also going to try to enhance more of our training. Training is something I'm very much a champion of. To me, enhanced training also increases firefighter and civilian safety. So we're going to be working more with some of our community partners, Chautauqua County, also ambulance, OFPC, try to do more outreach programs to bring more training here to us. As you guys are aware, our call volume continues to increase. We have the same number of staff. It gets to be difficult to send people out of town to seek training opportunities because we need them here running calls. So the more training we can bring to them, the better that is for us. Ladder 1 was refurbished. We received it back January of this year. The truck's been completely re-outfitted. We're very excited to have that truck back. So that'll be kind of something that'll be in the check mark column for 2022. We're still working very diligently as a staff and as a department to develop new solutions for both old and new problems. We do have challenges. Our call volume continues to increase every year. Our training requirements and all the other services that we provide also do not decrease with the increase in call volume. So we are working harder and we're trying to work smarter and more efficiently. One other thing that's a pretty good initiative that we're trying to work along is, again, more partnerships, but it's recruitment and retention. It's not always a common perception of people to really know what a career firefighter does. So we encourage more folks to, certainly contact us. We're more than willing to show anybody exactly what we do. And partnering with JCC and All-Star and some folks that are interested in medical or interested in running calls in general, please come down and see us because we're all about trying to educate people on what exactly it is that we do. We decide that they like this level. Overall, we thank our community partners that we work with on a day-to-day basis, Jamestown Police, All-Star Ambulance, National Fuel Gas, Red Cross, obviously the BPU. We've done training sessions with these other agencies all within the last year. The more training we can do with them and the more cohesiveness we can become, I think we're better off as a system. So I just want to say thank you to the community and to the council and everybody here for your continued support, and we look forward to providing you excellent service in 2022. Okay.
I have 2 questions. You mentioned the mutual aid.
Yes, sir.
The number was 400 and...
415 times the outside agencies were dispatched in the city. Yes.
Versus what was the increase?
In year would have to let you know what our total future was.
And then, do you have any numbers on us going out to the? I do. Roughly.
I think we went out 5. Yep,
5?
5 times we went out there.
Okay, any other questions?
Good for public safety.
Public works?
Yes. Well, we, in finance, we have covered the issues of the boiler. And, so I like, thanking Kevin Sixby, gentleman here from the Rotary Club, that would like to give us a short presentation on the new sign that they're protecting.
Kevin Sexby, I'm the current president of the Rotary Club of Jamestown, New York. This is a project that is approximately 25 years in the work. And one of the biggest hurdles was finding a property where we could do this, this project. Over the last year or so, Gary Lynn Development was gracious enough to enter into an agreement with the city to provide a plot of land at North Main Street, just inside the city line. Over the last year or so, our club has been working heavily to come up with an idea. This is part of our centennial project. So in the 100 years that Rotary's been in Jamestown, we've done several projects. Many of you probably know the Portage statue down by the Chattaquin. And so this is another gift we'd like to help the city with. We've gone through some revisions. Back in December, we did present this to the Planning Commission with a draft design that we thought was pretty final. Since then, we've met with some contractors and some fabricators. That's led to some changes. We aren't doing this in a vacuum. We've had city stakeholders involved in the project for the last year or so. Jeff Lehman, Lane Shadle. We've been working with CPL, formerly known as Clark Patterson Lee, who helped us with our drawings. There's been a number of other folks from the city that we brought in at various points to, you know, Dan Stone's been a part of the conversations, Chris Selstrom. So, you know, as each of these design phases have come forward, we've brought in the necessary smart lines. What we identified as we made this our centennial project is this is what most of the entryways in Jamestown look like. There's a big green sign with white lettering and a whole lot of other signage. It's nice, it's welcoming, but it's not crisp, it's not clean, and so we'd like to make a statement piece for the city. Identified the location here thanks to Lynn Development, directly across from Lakeview Cemetery. A lot of the brush has been cleared back. This is a fairly recent picture from the fall. And the plot diagram, so the McMobile's down here, North Main Street running in. This is setback. We know the city's planning a sidewalk here, so that's accounted for in the layout. And then the sign would be at somewhat of an angle pointed toward the road. This is the December build plans, which is what we submitted to a contractor to get some cost estimates. And also it was used to create a demonstration model. But before you see the demonstration model, we wanted to capture the city of Jamestown. It has a rich history, but it's moving forward. So we wanted to stay away from stagnation and relying just on what was an image of the past, but something that's representative of our future as well, without necessarily saying what that future is. Big task. But we had smart people helping us out. To keep the past a little bit alive, though, we wanted some materials that we thought were indicative of the city. You'll notice the steel girders over here. Those are from the railroad bridge. It was torn down by the BPU. We have an ability to incorporate those into the sign. So a nice big industrial feel. Also, hey, it was a bridge that crossed our Chattaquin. We wanted to put the oak trees from 3rd Street in. We've been told no. As we got into the fabricators, we got into people who are experts in wood, They said what you're gonna run into is major maintenance issues, it's gonna be terrible to try and upkeep, and since this is a gift to the city, we didn't want that burden. We are gonna find another way to bring the oak trees into this project, possibly as wooden ballasts for the lighting that we'll be projecting onto the sign. And then decommission city street bricks. We all know them, we all love them. Nobody wants to maintain them. But in this venue, they would make a great paver, a great little walkway. This helps also with the city maintenance. By not putting bushes right up in front of it, we're not always going in there to cut it down. So it gives a nice clearing, a nice setting for the sign. You'll see sloping base. That's the Chattaquin Riverbed. That's the rolling hills of the city. We've made a representative skyline. We didn't try and take the Jamestown skyline and put it on there because it could change. There'll be LED lighting. There's a mix of materials, and then of course we'll do a little bit of landscaping around it. And I know Dan will have a say in some of that. So, Patty was asked to just do some cardboard. And in her spare time, she took the design build instructions and made a scale model, painted it up. And so we took that up on the street. We put it on location, and we got a feel for how this 16, 17 foot long sign is going to fit on that plot of land. It gave us a little bit more idea how the angle should be. And by the way, it's there for an hour, and a couple of us got several phone calls saying, hey, we saw the sign went up. That's how good it was. Needless to say, it is just cardboard, so it's down. But that led us to a few revisions, and we were able to come into this idea. And this still incorporated the wood from the oak trees. You can see the brick base down there, set a little bit more to the left, and all those trees are already gone. So it'll present very nicely in this space. After meeting with our sign manufacturers, meeting with various material suppliers, last week we made some slight revisions. The wood becomes metal. We also decided to go dark with it, since we weren't dealing with trying to do natural wood anymore, and light lettering, which will just make the sign pop a lot more. We also took out some of the design features that the group felt might lend themselves more readily to vandalism. Again, doing everything we can to make this as maintenance-free, as easy to maintain as you can, but also, something substantial. And we felt all the way through, having New York on there is absolutely imperative. While not building a sidewalk to the sign, people coming into the city with something like this may want to get out, take a photo, and how many Jamestowns are there in the United States? Let's make sure they know which one they're in. So this is really what we've come to, and it'll be lit up at night. There's some uplighting so that the skyline will glow, but then there'll be some front face lighting on there as well. We've heard a lot about contractors. We have an idea that we can complete this summer. The current project cost is $60,000. Rotary Club of Jamestown initially had a pledge of around $8,000 to $10,000. I can tell you that working through the boards and everything right now, our commitment's at $25,000. So we are trying to be a third in on the project. $20,000, that's coming out of our funds. They're already there, they're ready to go. We want to raise another $5,000 to $10,000 on top of that. So we feel pretty strong at that $25,000 mark. Another third of that, we already have commitments from manufacturers locally, contractors locally, to provide materials, to do work. All the electrical is being donated. One of the manufacturers is donating metal, and we're going to do the fabrication for the panels. So things are humming along in that respect. And then we're going to our foundations desk for the last third of support. What questions do you have? I tried to do that as quickly as possible.
I just Googled, there are 30 Jamestowns.
There you go. So we want to be the Jamestown, New York.
Can you go back to that picture, the one question I had, the actual wide is that? That piece?
17 feet across.
No, that actual bar, like, yeah, put your finger down, right there. How wide is that? Do you know? The reason why I'm looking at that, that's a perfect opportunity for somebody skateboarding.
It's pretty thin.
Okay, okay.
so,
I
yeah.
couldn't tell because I know when I look at, and I know the skate park's not completed yet, but I'm going, when you talked about vandalism, and I'm looking at that and how the skateboarders ride, I was just curious if that was wide enough to get a skateboard on. Just
The other
asking.
hope that we're banking on here is it's Main Street. It's North of Main at the McMobile, and we're gonna light the thing up. So
Yeah, I know.
theoretically,
I know.
somebody will drag it by if somebody's brought something.
With a brick
Hopefully.
patio.
Okay.
It's gonna be really hard to get a skateboard.
All right, just asking.
Fair question.
For getting a skate park.
But no, I know, I like it, it really is nice, I really do, but when you know, we've heard about vandalism in the parks and other things, nothing surprises me anymore that somebody could try, but no, it's very stunning, I really like it, I think it really makes a statement. But as I say, I just had concerns, I've been watching too much of the Olympics, so.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
No?
Thank you, looks
Thank
great.
you, Kevin, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great idea.
The policy standpoint, all we're gonna have to accept the gift.
Yeah.
Right.
Randy, is there anything else that you,
That's gonna be it.
the rest of the resolutions are on?
We had two resolutions that were already.
You're right, that we're
They
covering.
were all the ones. Any questions? Is there any other business to come before the council? We have a mayor tonight, so the mayor's report. Anything else?
Actually, I would like to make a comment and thank Mary Strayevsky in my ward, who has been going out single-handedly and clearing the fire hydrants. So I do want to recognize her. She's a teacher in the Southwestern School District, and I've seen her out on some really cold days digging out the fire hydrants. So I think we brought this up before. Anyone that is able to do that, especially with the warmer weather on Wednesday, would be a good time to get outside and clear the fire hydrants for our fire safety.
I think Councilor Falk did a good job with inspiration.
I don't know, but I'm just commenting
all
on my
sorts of
word.
challenges on social media, so.
Okay.
it's been-
All right,
Again,
well,
it's a
thank
good
you.
point, get out there and
But I
help
did,
out.
yeah.
Hopefully, we won't have to worry about it for 8 months.
I don't know. But yeah, I do just want to recognize her. She wasn't looking for any recognition, but I thought, you know, I've seen her out there trying to clear them, and she's done a number of them, so I just wanted to recognize this citizen in my ward. That's it.
Anything else?
I would like to make mention of Mr. Champ and Mr. Piazza's concern over the crime that's happening here. And it seems like that, you know, we could start to be slipping away and losing a little bit of the fight that is being waged upon us. You know, I read that article about Erie, you know, stepping up with the police. And I think if there's any way, I'm gonna be a proponent that we really do need it as a direct result of, you know, of a violent crime happening. I may have mentioned before, years ago, Jamestown had a street crimes unit that they would run the car from 7 or 8 o'clock for 8 hours. Now Erie's doing that, okay? And sometimes it's March,